Welcome to another edition of the Omnis Hour. Let me turn this nice music down a little bit before it gets louder. I expect it will in the course of the piece. You may recognize that as the romantic movement of Scheherazade, which kind of fits the theme of this talk today. Little background on this talk. The theme came from actually one of my subscribers, or followers I should say, on X, in kind of a request to follow up on something he found interesting that I posted there about love in the simulation multiverse. So let's start out by taking a look at this artwork behind me and see more of it. I thought that was pretty interesting that it drew it the way it did with an extra limb, so that there were 5 limbs and then a head on these sort of starfish creatures, these 3 starfish creatures. So let's see what I gave it for the prompt there. I told the art AI, hang on, I gotta get back to it. I asked it to show me 3 Merkabas in a torrid love triangle, and this is what it gave me. I thought that was kind of artistically interesting. Didn't really convey the Merkaba theme that well, other than giving sort of a 6-pointed star to the body by adding this extra limb that I don't know. It's either a fetal hand coming out of a uterus, or perhaps extraordinarily long penis with a forked end or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, kind of strange, kind of interesting. What are we going to talk about today? Let's switch over to presentation mode, and I'm going to call this one Love is a Many Splendored, in parentheses, multi-dimensional think, where love fits into the simulation multiverse. Okay, and I made actually an extra slide to kind of go over this. Okay, one of the things that one needs to understand about the Merkaba is, well, first off, it's 12-dimensional, not 6 or 8, as many people would like to draw it. So it's not a Star of David. It's not a Star of David with the 3-dimensional 2 tetrahedron look. It's actually 3 tetrahedrons, each of which is not perfectly symmetrical and aligned with the other, but basically rotating, moving in its own way. And well, let's see. Let me get you so you can see me. So each one moving and rotating in its own way and expanding, and you get more of something like this, which if you extracted each of these, now I can maybe let's switch over. Oh, let's put the presentation big there. That's what will work better. Oops. Erase that. See if I can get the it won't let me move where that is, so you'll just have to bear with me until I start talking it over. So you see, these things are actually 3 tetrahedrons. They're actually the same size tetrahedrons, which I should have actually made them different sized and made them not right tetrahedrons, instead, not equilateral sides, but basically 4 points, random points connected. And each of those tetrahedrons is moving constantly, changing to adapt to its environment or to reflect the thoughts of the entity that that Merkaba belongs to. Okay, this is how quantum consciousness works in practice. This is the construct. So a unit of quantum consciousness has a Merkaba if it becomes incarnated and part of the system of the simulation multiverse. Raw, unformed consciousness does not have this construct. Okay, and that's the way things were in the beginning. God made the first Merkaba basically as a shield for his thoughts. And then around that made another Merkaba as a shield for the thoughts of the children that he wanted to let in on the divine plan. And so you can see that these Merkabas could be stacked, or they can work, let me take me out of this picture so I can talk it out better. They can work in relationship with others. And because consciousness is fundamental, everything is consciousness. Every entity you can think of, whether it's material or immaterial, has a Merkaba, has one of these constructs behind it that determines how it manifests in the, quote, real world, in the physical universe or in the spiritual universe, wherever you happen to be. Okay, so let's take a look at a simple love affair in this context. Okay, so you've got some entity that is part of a love affair. You've got another entity that's part of it. Okay, generally, you don't have more than two lovers involved in a love affair. We're not going to talk about threesomes or gang banging or anything like that. That's advanced. I think you can kind of imagine how those would work after I get through this talk. They have a construct called love that represents the relationship between these two. This is a karmic relationship. And these karmic things are the immaterial things that mediate between the physical things, the material things. So love is an abstract. You can't hold it, you can't shape it, you can't draw it. You can imagine what it might look like, you can try to materialize it, but something will always be lost in the translation because it's not a material thing. The shape of this love, like the shape of an individual's Merkaba, is complex and constantly changing. Some strong resonances may connect these characters, may fit them together in a certain way. You know, see, like this pointing out sort of fits in this little niche here, and maybe this point fits in this niche here, and this construct sort of fits over here. But there's maybe some things that don't fit, that don't feel resonant. And in any real world love relationship, there will be things like that, because love is multi-dimensional, just like people are multi-dimensional. We don't always wake up in the same mood every day. We don't remain in the same mode throughout the day. And things that are outside of this love affair could drastically change the resonance that we present to this trinity, if you will. Okay, another thing that one should remember is that love is something that you could observe too. So you may have an external party observing this love affair. Now, that observer can't directly see the love or the character of the love, because that is, rather a private thing between the two lovers, right? So what they can see is the effect of the love on the lovers. And depending on where they're observing, if they're over on this side, let's see, let me get a pointer here so I can. If they're over on this, no, not okay. If they're over on this side, then their point of view is going to be more in line with what lover 2 experiences of this relationship. So, this observer might be the best friend of lover 2 and kind of see this love affair more like their friend does than their friend's partner, which can complicate relationships, as we all know. If you took this observer and maybe sent them on a I don't know, a business conference or a boondoggle of some sort, where they had to spend a lot of time with lover 2, their point of view might move and they might become closer to seeing this love affair from that point of view. Similarly, during the course of a love affair, the parties might move further apart, one of them or both of them, or they might come closer together, and that love affair becomes one of the more important relationships in their life, because there will be other relationships. We have relationships to our job, relationships to our friends, relationships to our family, and so forth. And each of those karmically affects the love affair. And this is what makes love so complicated. It's not a simple thing. It's not a universal. It is a universal in the sense that it is essentially the manifestation of karma. Karma is this force that either attracts us or repels us. So it has essentially a love characteristic. And to the extent that any spiritual entity is love, it's not God, it's karma. So this is another, really key point to understand if you want to have a more sensible and scientific religion. And, I think one of the things that I'm going to stress is that in this day and age, when we have so much scientific evidence, so many experiments proving this is the way things work, at least in the physical universe, it's kind of stupid to hold on to religious beliefs that are anti-scientific, that don't make any sense, that don't match up with what we know. And actually this ties in with one of the teachings that I stress the most often, because love is not a universal, it's the same thing for everybody. Okay, now I want to try to get back in the picture here. Oh, there we go. Now I can be in the picture and you can still see the thing. Rather than being a universal, everybody says, nobody defines love the exact same way, and no two relationships even define love the same way. The love you have for God, for instance, is a very different kind of love than you have for a sexual partner or a family partner or a family member. It's by virtue of the relationship, it has to be different. Okay? So, let's see, let's erase some of this stuff that we've got going here. Get a big pointer. Come on. Ooh, I like this feature. Okay, so love is changeable. And this is one of the things that people don't get is, when they say, God is love. Well, that's nonsense, because you haven't defined love and you haven't quantified it. And even if you did quantify it, it's not a constant. It's constantly changing. It's multidimensional. There's an aspect of loving God that is, kind of a fatherly relationship. But if most fatherly relationships are a combination of love and fear. And, respect comes into it, or disrespect. Complex relationship. So anybody that, sort of defines their worldview saying, well, love is unconditional and universal, and we all just need to love everybody and everything will be perfect. I'm sorry, that's very, very naive and narcissistic, narrow-minded, simple-minded even. And I don't mind saying that, and throw darts at me for saying that, but it's true. You're oversimplifying love, and you are forgetting that it is multidimensional, and because it's changeable, one of the most common occurrences with love is for it to turn into hate. And I can't count the number of people that I've met who once loved God, who once were very religious, but became irreligious because of something that happened in their life. Maybe they equated religion with their parents, and their parents got on their nerves when they were a teenager and made them go to church, and now they hate religion, and now they hate God, and they're atheists. A lot of people like that. Love can turn to hate because it is part of the same spectrum. It's part of the same set of dimensions, and there are different qualities to love. There's a love that comes out of respect. There's a love that comes out of dependency. And there's a love that comes out of tolerance, if you will. Accepting that, okay, this person is this way. Some aspects of them I really, really love in a very romantic way. Some I love in a respectful way. Some I love in a appreciative way. Some I love in a reciprocal way, a codependent way. And there's some things that I really don't love, but I tolerate, so I love in a tolerational way. And any real relationship has all those aspects. If the people involved are at all complicated. So yes, there are some non-player character souls out there that will have a very simple and pure love because they're simple and pure souls. That's just fine for them, but those aren't the souls that are going to be the movers and shakers and accomplishers. They're going to be kind of like background scenery in a community. They'll participate in the community. They're not going to be the ones getting up in front of the PTA and changing the direction of the school curriculum, or running for mayor, or whatever person that's getting really involved in changing the course, setting the direction of a larger soul group. Might be a good point. We should recommend a book to read if you've not read it before. There's one of the novels of Kurt Vonnegut, who's an interesting novelist to digest because he grew out of the post-World War II era of, if you were an intellectual, you were very heavily subjected to sort of this cultural Marxist woke cult worldview, which was, very secular, virtually atheistic, and kind of in this New Age vein of, well, everybody should be able to do whatever they want. It was the me generation. He wrote largely in the 60s, and the hip, it was very popular with the hippie set. And you might think, well, why would I want to read that? Many of his novels are really rather nihilistic and anti-religious. But actually, if you read them from the standpoint of, okay, what inspired this? And if you took out the filter of, I don't believe in God, I don't believe God is good if there is a God, I don't believe there's a point to anything in life, this sort of nihilistic attitude that was very prevalent in that era, especially among academics and the pop crowd, you actually see that he was inspired by very religious themes. So anyway, I'll recommend two books that will help you if you read them, kind of see the polarities of love and maybe see some of the ups and downs. First one, the one I was going to recommend most for this subject, is a novel called Cat's Cradle. Not his best known novel. The best known novel is Slaughterhouse-Five, of course. Cat's Cradle, though, is a very, very interesting novel because it introduces the idea of a made-up religion. So the whole novel centers on this little island of San Lorenzo, imaginary island, that is run by a dictator, Banana Republic, typical dictator, but has this counterculture figure of a guy named Bokonon, who has invented this new religion. That's their primary religion. Their primary ritual is the touching of feet. You get back to back with somebody and you knead your feet together. And that's considered a very sensual and sexual thing that is actually illegal in this place, but everybody does it every chance they get because that's their entertainment. Strange place has no contraceptives and very limited resources, so they don't want to have too many kids, so they do this bokumaro, they call it, the meeting of the feet. At any rate, it introduces concepts of soul groups and gives them names. It calls a soul group that consists of two individuals, so this would be like this construct here where two lovers are so in love that they meet every need of each other and they don't need anything outside of that. I call that a dupras. And there are larger soul groups that are sort of geared towards, this is actually where I got a lot of my ideas about how the simulation multiverse works. So I know that, Kurt Vonnegut was a very inspired person because much of his work inspired me. To begin with, when I first read his works, when I was kind of a young college-age physics student who was kind of teetering on the edge of atheism, because I'd grown up not really liking going to church. My parents took me to the Presbyterian church, and I thought it was just a big social hour, and it was, the sermons were boring as hell. They weren't speaking to me. There wasn't really anything religion said to me. My interest actually was other religions at that time. Particularly, I really was enamored of pagan religion, Greek, Roman, their gods and goddesses and their way of viewing the world. Especially, I was quite taken with the idea of Apollo and the Muses. I've always thought that, absent art, there's not really anything spiritual about human existence. So that must be, deeply tied with the point of creation. It's not just to make things, but to make beautiful things. And that actually is one of the things that leads to the conclusion that we have a simulation multiverse, not a single universe. Because beauty is in the eye of the observer, the beholder. Okay, so this love affair may look beautiful to this observer, but to another observer looking from a different angle at a different distance, it may look like, those people, their love is so fake, blah, 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 blah. They may have a totally different perspective of it. So again, love also applies not only to relationships between people, but to relationships between ideas, between styles, between things. There's so much wrapped in this that I think is worth talking about. But you have to kind of back off and realize that these constructs are not constant. They don't mean the same thing to everybody. Anybody looking at one particular love is going to call it and describe it something completely different. Even these two lovers, deeply in love, sharing this love construct between them, is going to describe that thing as something different. Gosh, I wish it would let me show the cursor on the presentation here. I'm going to ask for that as a possible enhancement to the, that ought to be fairly easy to add. I'm always wanting to switch back into software developer mode when I'm working with a new application. Any rate, this is the background of love. The attraction that ideas have for each other, things have for each other, are mediated by essentially a construct of love called karma. It actually represents all of the possible kinds of love and hate. So karma is kind of the super love, if you will, the super emotion that is able to manifest an attraction or repulsion on everything it comes in contact with. Now, there's one other aspect I wanted to get into. You could imagine that this love affair would grow so close that it becomes encompassing. Okay, so what if this love grew so great as to encompass both lovers? Or the lovers came so close that they actually overlapped into this love. This is essentially what happens when when a relationship becomes more important than the individuals that are having the relationship. And this is where basically collectives come from. A hive mind, if you will. If the love within that hive mind, and essentially a lot of New Age religions are based on hive mind religions. Any religion that says we are all one, it's all love, universal love, okay, this is a hive mind religion. And this is essentially where you let this love bubble of you between you and everything else grow to an infinite size. This is not a healthy thing. It creates karmic entanglements that other souls don't want. I don't want to be part of your one. I'm not part of your one. You have no right to force me to be part of your unity. And this is a huge part of the political problem we're going through right now, because the woke cult mentality says that, well, if we just get everybody educated the same way, if we get them indoctrinated the same way, then we will all think the same and we will all be one and we'll have perfect peace, right? This is really dark and really, really sinful, because the biggest sin you can make is to force another consciousness to conform against their will. This is tyranny. And that's another reason why I have to constantly remind people that the idea of an almighty, all-powerful creator is nonsense. That would be a tyrant creator. And God is no tyrant. Some entities that have their own universe are tyrants. The Lord of the Multiverse, the sum of all universes, the architect who came up with the Merkaba construct, is no tyrant. In fact, his whole design methodology was to try to eliminate tyranny. So first, from the standpoint of, okay, I'm going to make my own Merkaba so I can't be tyrannized by others invading my thoughts and stealing my ideas. Okay? God doesn't want people to steal his ideas. He wants them to invent their own, to go through the process themselves. Because if you just steal an idea, you don't really know how it works. You don't know how it's been tested, if it's been tested, what are the downsides to it. And this is a key part of creation, and the creation of things like relationships. One of the biggest mistakes you can make in a relationship is to assume that the other person defines love the same way you do. Nothing could be further from the truth. To assume that they know what the love process looks like, how it's going to proceed, that's just as nonsensical. Even if they've had relationships before, the character of those relationships would never have been exactly like the character of this new relationship. And so a lot of people sabotage future relationships based on what was the previous relationship, or based on relationships they've observed. So, for instance, my parents were married for, I think, about 64, 65 years. They met in high school sweethearts. They married as soon as my dad got out of the Navy after World War II. And, basically stayed together forever. And as far as anybody knew, they were like the most perfect couple there ever was. It was always a little bit strange because they were kind of like Archie Bunker and Edith, the All in the Family couple. My dad was very, very conservative, very Archie Bunkerish kind of a guy, which I kind of understand him better now after having being raised in that environment, going completely the other direction towards the liberal side, and then realizing, you know what, I can see why my dad is conservative. Finally understand it after going through the gyrations. At any rate, my mother was very much a homemaker, all about the family, always taking care of the family, cooking, cleaning, nurturing, but really kind of a dingbat when it came to anything else. Didn't know anything about politics or care. She was actually grew up as a Roman Catholic and always did kind of think like a Catholic. But she went to church with my dad because that was an era where the man decided everything. So we never really learned much about Catholicism. But when I started listening to music, my favorite music was classical, and a lot of my favorite pieces were very much imbued with a Catholic spirit. And that was one of the things that helped, kind of turn me against religion, at least the religion of my parents, for so long. But at any rate, you would think this was a perfect couple, but then, it wasn't until a few years before my dad died we ended up getting very, very close. Towards the end of his life, I spent one summer helping him build his dream house instead of going and getting a summer job during college. That brought us together, and then later on, I was living close to them towards the end of his life, and I used to bring my karaoke set up, and he just loved singing these old country songs that he hadn't heard in a long time. And he had a horrible voice, just miserable voice. I guess I did too when I first started singing, but he never got better. At any rate, we got really close, and at one point he told me, I never told anybody this, but there were a lot of times that you and your mother and I nearly got divorced, including just recently. And it was like, wow, I never realized that. There was a whole dimension, many dimensions of their relationship that even as close as they were, as close as we were to them, we never even noticed. So, this is another indication of just how complex love is from a quantum standpoint, from a more scientific standpoint. There are many dimensions and very few of them that you see. And some of the dimensions that we see are more projected than real. Okay, it's what they want you to see. And anybody who knows, a couple really well, kind of as an observer, best friend of the family or something like that, or a pastor or something, knows that every couple has what they project of their relationship, what they want to show people of what this is all about, and what's actually going on in it. And we get really, really good at projection, everyone. And that's because we all go through this stage of the terrible twos where we are defining our personality. And while your personality is under definition, twos are very selfish. They are very self-centered. They are very narcissistic. And it's inevitable that some amount of that narcissism remains even after you get past the twos and you have developed hopefully a well-rounded personality. A certain amount of narcissism remains, and a certain amount of narcissism is actually healthy. It's what gives us our ego, our ambition to do certain things, our ambition not to do certain things, because we don't want to be seen as a wastrel, a drunkard, or something like that, you know. So we will drink in secret, or we gamble in secret, or we will limit our fantasies so as not to embarrass ourselves. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's one of the things that I find really asinine about this woke cult stuff that we have going now is they preach that that's a good thing. Oh, you should just do whatever you want and be whoever you want. Come out. Don't be ashamed. And I'm sorry, that's evil. You need to be ashamed of some things because sin is shameful. It's shameful to abuse a child. It's shameful to indoctrinate, to groom a child, to become a sexual slave, a mental slave, to an ideology. And that's what terrorists do. They are grooming children in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Iran, to be human time bombs. Teaching, I mean, there's recordings of them where they're teaching kids at barely beyond toddler age how to arm IEDs in backpacks so that they can go blow up Israeli soldiers. It's disgusting. It's satanic. I don't care if you hate Jews, if you think Israel is a horrible idea, if you hate anybody that much that you would groom your kids to be human time bombs, you are a sick, satanic fuck. Anyway, I think that's pretty much covered the topic that I wanted to hit here. If you have any questions, be sure to ask them in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, and until next time, this is Rob Trump with the Honest Hour saying happy karma. Oh, come on. Show it. There we go. Happy karma. Oh, it was just one more thing. It was so funny on X today that there was something posted about George Takei, who is one of the few characters that's still alive from Star Trek, one of the ones that I'm not too fond of. Any rate, he's always been kind of an arch enemy of James Kirk, who I actually like. William Shatner, he can be a little bit of an asshole, but he's really a unique person. He's a special individual. Frankly, this George Takei would never have gotten on the show if they didn't have to have a token Asian on the show. And the few episodes he stood out were ones where he was actually behaving like a psycho. So maybe that's his strength. Anyway, he's been a real psycho about the political thing going on. And I posted he was ranting on about the election results this week, holding up his live long and prosper bullshit and bad-mouthing Trump, and I wrote something to the effect of, well, it's all well and good that you've lived long and prospered, but in fact, most of the people in the country are barely able to put food on the table. And especially since the Bidenomics inflation era, where everything has gone up way more than they admitted, And you know, the only thing that hasn't gone up in the last 4 years is wages. Gone down, actually. Probably there's more service sector jobs than there are higher paying jobs, and more competition for those service sector jobs because you've got all these illegal immigrants coming in. Anyway, so I don't have much use for George Takei, so I'm going to give you a live short and don't prosper. Oh, where can I put this where you can see it? This is for you, George Takei. I don't like you. And it's got nothing to do with your race, and it's got nothing to do with your sexuality. I don't like you because you're an asshole. Hollywood asshole. Sorry about that. Had to get that out. At any rate, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the Omnist Hour.